Little dot on your screen. I don't know whether it's your camera. Maybe you want. Is that
I
gonna?
think
It's getting
like
better.
I
So,
think it's reflection from
oh,
my light.
Oh yeah, it could be just a reflection.
yeah,
Yeah,
reflection.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, no worries.
Let me
Okay,
adjust.
it's gone for now.
Yeah. Well, I guess we have the intro now.
The beat.
Hello and welcome back to the Marketing Playable Characters. Today we have Calvin, and he's from Dynasty Gaming. We have Josh, and we have myself. Calvin, do you want to give a little bit of an intro to yourself and what you're about?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you guys. Um, so I'm with Dynasty Gaming, and we're a eSports platform provider, right? If I were to sort of like sell this a bit, we're kind of like a tech-first esports agency, probably the only kind in the industry whereby not only do we provide gaming and content to brands to run their own type of esports activations, we actually have a tech stack that supports it, right? Not something that you can run off, without a proper tool. A bit more about myself. I'm in the gaming industry for close to 7 years. About 2 years in esports. Prior to that, I was mostly doing casual games. It was kind of like in the business of helping apps to gamify their app with casual gaming as a platform so that you can increase more users. With more users, you get more engagement, and more engagement obviously means more money for them. So,
Yep.
all in the business do that. Yeah, I'm basically I play Dota. I play Diablo whenever I'm not working. So I love the grind.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah,
How many times have you completed the game, Diablo? For four.
3 times. Right now, I'm grinding my barbarian, who is just reached level 85. So I've got 15 more levels to max him out.
Okay. Okay. You're not doing
Yeah.
any rifts, or you're still like weekend rifting with friends?
Not really, just on my own mostly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny because today's episode is about esports. So it's something that I guess I've been trying to. I always wanted to be part of when I was growing up. In 2000, 2002, when I was in Canada, we had bright speed broadband. So we had high speed broadband. And one of the things was MRC was the place to be. And that was how you get into teams. That's how you get tryouts and all that kind of stuff. And that was where the melting pot of esports was starting, right? And you had a Cyber Athlete Professional League, CPL, and they had their amateur league, which was Cal. It's an online league, which of course everyone was cheating at until they had some pretty good anti-cheat software. Um, Josh, to my knowledge, you never really talk about your esports history.
No, never participated. So never had the gall or the bravery to compete.
Even in Street Fighter?
No, dude. So the only it's only PVE for me. So the arcade difficulty is my competitor. Thus far, thus far.
I gotta say, man, like back in the day, we used to go to all these like famous arcades to go and get your ass kicked, right? It was like SS2. You go there, play King of Fighters. 40 cents later, you're like, you wait like 5 minutes to get your butt whooped by one character. He doesn't even have to switch to the next two characters because you can't even beat his first. And
I'm,
like,
I'm a bit like Josh, I'm also a PvE, and when you talked about arcade, what game that I always will win is Time Crisis. If you guys play that game,
yeah,
Yeah,
back
yeah.
in the
I
day,
always
It's
get
fun, dude.
the top score. Like one coin, I win that game, and I'm on the top score. That's the only thing that can beat me on.
oh man,
Takes a lot of skill, dude.
I am so
In games like High
uncoordinated,
Crisis.
man. I used to go like in Canada. They used to have like you go on off peak hours, so like 9 to 12. They give you $20 and you can play as long as you want, and they try and hook you in because like chances are you'll be hungry, and then there's a food stand, and there's a bar, and there's snacks and all that. So they're trying to get you for the whole 3 hours and all that. But if you come already well prepared to eat, then or at least full, you don't really have to spend money. But okay, getting into it. Actually, it's really funny because Josh and I just watched a video today separately, and we have very differing thoughts about esports. And the topic, which I know it's a little bit veering off the path of I think what we intentionally wanted to set out to do, but we'll get there eventually, was how esports is ruining other games or the idea of esports has completely fudged or has forgotten the FGC, the fighting game community, and all that. And it was kind of interesting because I thought, like, well, I don't really see it as such a bad thing. I view people who get in or companies who get into esports like are pretty fair weather. They're not the type of people who are staying for the longevity, right? So the money is not going to be a long term thing. Like when I look at games like Overwatch League, where they have to pay like 20 million for a franchise title to be part of their league, and then I view something like Dota 2. I go, well, Dota 2's kind of got it right. They got their consumer base to spend oodles of money on a battle pass or a treasure chest, and all that money is accumulated. Valve takes 80% of it, and they give 20% as the prize pool. And of course, they foot the bill for the stadium, the production company they're using to get their live stream off the ground and all that kind of stuff for the international. And I was just thinking, like, it can't be that bad. I mean, esports can't all be that bad. I mean, in the right hands, I mean, Valve's not necessarily the best hands, but it seemed to do pretty all right. I think that like people generally like going to a Dota 2 major, they like going to a regional major, and they like going to the international, right? And it sounds like these events are few and far between. But I guess maybe the first question I want to ask is, does esports have to be like an everyday thing? Does it have to be like ESPN? Does it have to be like basketball? There's a game your favorite team's playing every 2 to 3 days or 4 days. You know, your favorite football team's got to play every week. You know what I mean? Like, does it have to be that? What are your thoughts, guys?
Well, I'll go first, right? So I'm thinking like when you say whether it has to be an everyday thing, it's just like sports. Do you watch sports every day? Some people do, right? And when we talk about esports, right? Well, probably not us or probably not the majority of your audience here, right? But a lot of people always have the perception that whenever you think about a gamer, it's like some pimply 14-year-old kid hidden in the basement, playing and all that. Well, Malaysia don't have basement, but in the little storeroom or something like that, or wherever that's closest to the Wi-Fi router, right? And they're just playing. But I think what a lot of people don't see is that esports has a lot of entertainment value. I mean, if you look at the breakdown, right, you probably only have maybe 5% of your total gaming audience that's what we call maybe the ultimate gamer, right? These guys are like hardcore. They would love to play. They are in on the latest games. They play for the fun, for the competition, and so on. But if you look at stats today, I mean, and this is a profile broken down by another company, not me, that's 5% of ultimate gamers, but 28% is what we call them as popcorn gamers. They play casually, maybe like you and me, but they just love to watch. I mean, not esports, but look at Diablo, right? I've watched hours of content about different builds just to watch them and see how they play and all that kind of stuff. And that was fun to me. When I was playing Dota a lot, I always watched Dota WTF moments. And I was like, oh shit, that was awesome. Right? Like you have no idea how that actually happened. So I think esports in a certain sense has a lot of entertainment value. It's not something that, well, you can or can't have every day. But if you could have a stream to say that, like you just look at all the big YouTubers who make a lot of money from these type of esports games, they just stream content and they make huge tons of money from their followings, from advertising and so on. Probably the reason why you don't see esports as an everyday thing is because it's not that easy to execute, right? You gotta have a major event and so on and so forth. So that's maybe my first thought on that subject.
Josh, what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, quite right, Calvin. I mean, I think it feels like, I mean, I think even in like conventional sports, you can have it every day if you want. But I think maybe in this day and age, it's kind of like, and you brought up a very important point, right? Where a lot of, be it if you are a competitor or even if you're just an enthusiast, right? You're kind of like, some people who are content creators are pressured to develop content day in, day out. So I don't know if it's because it's just the pressures of modern day, and it's but I don't necessarily feel that it needs to be every day, because most days, I mean, like you're mentioning, you look at at like different games and how they make builds and so on, right? So for me, I would look at different tactics when it comes to Street Fighter 6 and different patterns and different ways you can actually approach for a character. So, but it doesn't need to be like an everyday affair, I guess. But we can watch like replays and it builds up to the actual tournament itself. So I guess it's just interest overall.
Yeah, I guess that comes back to that. Remember that the first article we wrote, Josh, with Shauna, we were talking about that 360 no scope and how that sort of changed YouTube and the 360 no scope and Call of Duty kind of changed the face of gaming a little bit, right? Everyone then was kind of uploading silly videos of them trying to attempt the same move in game, in a different game like Battlefield, in a different game like Counter-Strike, in a different game like Rainbow Six or something like that. And it became like, it's like a very memeable thing, right? Like people just want to see you do amazing things. And I felt that maybe we're tapping into something and I think people still don't do this really well, right? Like ESPN shows you the highlight of the night, for example, or like Fox Sports will show you the highlight of the night. And it's like some dude dunking over someone, or a last second three-pointer, or like a back heel goal in front of the net, like Henry or something like that. And then you're going like, wow, that's crazy. But on certain YouTube channels, yes, they get featured. Like you get like Potato Monster, which is the Valorant channel for all these mishaps and funny videos and also skill shots and all that. But it's not made its way fully into, I guess, it's not a phenomenon yet. You know what I mean? Like, people don't go out there and go, I want to watch the top 10 plays of the week in a pro setting from Dota 2, from Counter-Strike, from Valorant, from this and that. And then people don't interact by voting for their favorite. Because a lot of the time, like, when you see someone like Michael Jordan hit a fadeaway jumper to win the game, chances are the kid who watched that is out the next day at the playground trying to do the exact same thing. You know what I mean? Like, I see Michael Jordan dunk from the free throw line. They're going to try to do the same thing even though they can't even jump 2 feet in the air or 1 foot forward far enough, right? So I was just wondering, like, I do feel like this is a missed opportunity, right? Like, nobody seemed to capitalize on it, but also I feel like, are gamers just too, like, do people take gamers so seriously that they're afraid to go and put it on like ESPN highlights? You know what I mean? Like the Score eSports, right? That is actually from an actual TV channel in the States where they just do highlights all day, every day. And they do a little bit of content during the day. But by the time 8, 9 o'clock rolls around, it is just every single sports like highlights of the day, like a news channel runs like Reuters or something. You know what I mean? Like, shouldn't we have that by now? I don't know.
I'm thinking when you talk about highlights, right? I mean, if you think about esports versus your traditional sports, right? Everything done online, I can stream whatever game that I play, and I could have hours of content on there. Maybe the reason why there's not really a business around highlights is because there's just so much content around highlights. You can just get it anywhere for free on YouTube. And because anybody can be a content creator nowadays, right? So I know my younger brother's a content creator. He plays Dead by Daylight. He's Malaysian, but get this, right? Of course he's Malaysian, I'm Malaysian. He's 90% of his audience are in Japan.
What?
And he streams in Japanese, right? He's fluent in Japanese, right?
Wow,
Probably
well
speaks
done.
fluent in English. And he just gets his content out there. And I was like, wow. So that kind of reminded me, like, he doesn't need to be a famous player to get people to watch him. I mean, like, when he told me that when his fans in Japan, like, the way that he plays Dead by Daylight, I don't play the game, but he told me there's a certain way that he plays this character where it's supposed to be a range character, but he plays it it's supposed to be a melee character, but he plays it as a range. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that, oh, that's Gabu, right? Like, watch out. Okay. Like, yeah. So he has this, like, signature, so I guess he gets his way out there. I mean, so I guess there's not really a need to have just a channel just to look on highlights when you just go to YouTube and you can find it. Right?
I guess when you're looking for that sort of specific one, right? Like I would always look for a specific player that I used to watch on YouTube, right? It's very like there's no sort of mincing words. Like you're not gonna go and guess who you want to watch, right? Like But then also I feel like then you kind of shorten your pool. You know what I mean? Your search history or your search functions, and you don't quite get as exposed to whatever it is that might be out there, right?
But that's so fascinating, Calvin, because like it kind of I mean the story of your brother kind of like shows that I mean he's got so much personality, right? He plays it a different way. I think that's I mean aside from the language that he also speaks that he also speaks Japanese, it's also he's playing a melee character like a range character, right? So that kind of shows that I mean it's different than the Michael Jordans or the Thierry Henrys or these professionals, because nowadays anybody and everybody can be a content creator if they're passionate about it. But I think the commonality between personalities is basically the personality. You need to be different to a certain manner. Either you're a recognized icon or a skill, or you do something different, and people gravitate to that. So I guess that's why a lot of his viewers remember and recognize him. Right? Would you say that would be a big thing though, this of his draw among his fans?
I would think so. I mean, just for anybody, right? If I watch a stream and I don't like the guy, no matter how good he plays, I just won't watch it.
Yeah.
Maybe I find it annoying, right? And I don't know, maybe his style really resonates with the Japanese people, right? It's not because he speaks the language. Maybe his demeanor is a bit more like towards there. No idea why he has not tried it in Malaysia, but like I guess it's just his crowd, right? I mean,
Well, that's good. I mean, like I'm assuming the Japanese are paying crowd versus Malaysians.
I hope so. I hope so.
Very hard to part with a few ringgit, I think. So, but that's cool though. I think we're kind of going a little bit off, but it's okay. It's not a huge problem. I just want to see or at least get some thoughts here about. We always talk about esports, right? And a lot of people don't quite seem to understand what esports means. I think someone's gonna have to do a like counter at some point in these videos so that they can take a shot every time I say like. Because I noticed that the last few videos, I'm like, it's like. So anyways, maybe like and subscribe the video. No, but going back to this whole idea of what is esports? For me, it was always the competition aspect, right? It is about, I want to feel what it's like to get into the 1%. Or at least hang around the 1%ers, right? Go into a LAN server with somebody from NIP or Team Solo Mid or Evil Geniuses and then get washed and see what the difference in level was, you know what I mean? And then have someone break down why you weren't as good. Because there are a ton of basketball videos out there, right? That do analysis of this caliber, or even football videos that train you how to position yourself in the play. So, esports isn't just about the video game anymore, is it? What do you guys think? I think it's about honing that skill, and it's about honing that hobby and turning it into something else that's more meaningful to you than just playing a video game, right?
I mean, I think you're right. So it's like, I mean, video games is just, it started off as entertainment, but I think with the advent of, I mean, there was definitely games like Karateka and so on, but really, I think
that reminds me of that. Do you remember the beginning of Bloodsport, the Van Damme movie?
Yeah.
Him and the big guy, and they're playing an early version of Street Fighter, which is Karateka, right? Which is the 4 joysticks thing. You got to move with one joystick, and then your kicks are all up, down, left, right, diagonal, right?
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that.
No, but it's cool because I mean, it's what started out as just like purely entertainment, is because I mean the nature is so interactive, right? That we can't help ourselves but dive into what makes us human as well, right? Which is basically to just compete, no? So I think so I think it's like and it is a new avenue now to compete within with each other. So I think what started out as something so tactile, like when it comes to, like you mentioned, in terms of basketball or even football, right? Now we look at video games as a space to compete, no? Within what we love. So I think it's just an extension of what it is inherent in all of us, in whatever level. I mean, some of us just choose to watch people fight, or to compete against each other, but it's still,
Oh right, yeah,
yeah.
like UFC, boxing, that kind of thing,
Oh,
right?
yeah, totally, man. Like just like UFC, or even something where we know it's fake, like wrestling, but
Oh,
it's still,
my favorite.
it's the competition. It's like you know who's gonna win, but for the sake of the drama and the narrative, and I hope we touch on this later on, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, viewership and interest just spikes from it, no? Yeah.
I think what esports is kind of evolving in is it's not just from the top 1% on competitive play. It's basically people also realizing how big the business is. I mean,
Hmm.
not just for brands or companies that's into esports, but even for the player. I mean, think about it. Like, remember that news about this kid in the US probably 3 4 years ago who won like millions of dollars. Probably I think was the pot was 30 mil and he won like 10%. So he walked away with $3 million just playing Fortnite.
Oh man.
And before that, I remember reading something about like his mom was like berating him, "Why are you playing video games all the
Yeah.
time?" And suddenly he's bringing home $3 million. Like, and she's like, "Wow, keep playing."
Yeah, I
But
guess it's
yeah,
it's kind of become that sort of the grind that sort of paid off, right? In some cases, not in all cases, right? I know I'm still pretty
Mhm.
trash at FPS games, like so. I'm never gonna make it 44. It's not happening.
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess it's also skill, right? I mean,
Hmm.
esports requires a lot of skill. I mean,
Mm.
to get at a certain level. I remember some of my friends who used to try and compete with Dota, and they reached like a matchmaking rating about like I don't know 1,000, and they told me just to get to the next 100, it's so difficult. You gotta like play with top players, and
Mm.
and they'll kill you within the first 5 minutes, right? So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that people are actually realizing that hey, my skill in video games can actually be monetized. And if I can't win in esports, maybe I'll just create content, right? In some way or the other, right? So there's a lot. Yeah, I guess it's all about how do I monetize my skill, and esports is just another avenue for that.
Okay, that's I like that because content creators is something that I think we arrived upon recently. Like Josh and I, we were looking at some stats and some data about it, and it did come up that like some great players like what's his name, Josh Nissan Steele. He was like he was banned for matchmaking and betting on themselves to lose. Basically, they were fudging everything, and they got banned by Valve for playing Counter Strike. And
Right.
he ended up being a pretty high level pro player who was offered a job as a tournament observer. So the in game observer, the in game camera control guy. And I was like, those who cannot do or watch, and those who don't want to watch can do something else or find something else to do in the same sphere. And I feel
Mm.
like the thing that maybe people don't talk a lot about, which I think is it's not on my notes, but it's definitely something we should address, is like the people behind the scenes of esports isn't always the money people. You know what I mean? It's a lot of people. There are a lot of people who host events that are event organizers. They have to go find a space, find a venue, do the rentals, this, that, and the other, and put this package together and sell it and make people hype about it, right? Like I think that's one of the more underpublicized points of esports. Like it could be that this is a very big burgeoning business if you skew it the right way. Does that sort of like is that true in your neck of the woods, Calvin? Like when because I know you guys do mostly digital platform, but you guys also do on ground as well, right? At some point.
Yeah, I think I think esports is also about. I mean, the business of esports, while it's so widespread and out there, it's not as easily accessible as might one think,
Hmm.
right? I mean, as a business, you gotta put in a bunch of money into the prize pool. If just say if you want to run a tournament or event someplace, right? You gotta you got to get the right teams. You got to put in money in a prize pool. You got to organize an event. You got to make sure there's connection. There's a lot of logistics that goes into organizing an esports event, and maybe that's why we don't see it enough. But
Hmm.
even like big titles like the one in Malaysia is like MLBB, it's seasonal, right? I mean, you got
Hmm.
a major one every year, and I'm surprised why they don't do it as often. Maybe it's because it's too high. But what we're also not tapping into is that we only see that the top 1% of those pro players that we know of, but in between, all the way down to us that play casually, there's a lot of leagues in between that we're probably not accounting for. Like if you look at baseball, you've got the little leagues, the middles, and all that. Same thing with esports. And I came to know this also is because, again, my younger brother, right? He just gives me insights into his world sometimes when he plays grassroots tournaments and so on. They are playing like a 2-week tournament for just a prize pool of 500 ringgit. I was like, wow, that's just $500. I mean, like, how you guys are doing it? Oh yeah, it's just like fully online. We just have a small little community where we're organizing it ourselves on Discord, and we just get our friends and family to join in, and we just play for the community, for the fun of it. And I can't think of it like there has to be a bigger market for this, but we're just not seeing or tapping into it. Which is actually one of the main reasons why we started this business at Dynasty, right? It's really to just tap into that, because with that platform, you can run everything fully online. And the way that we do it is that we allow people to run their own tournaments on our platform. Because if you think about it, if you want to run a tournament, you got to maybe like do signups on like a Google Sheet. You got to manage that marketing on Challenge, and then you talk to people on Discord. So we thought like there's so much friction in creating your own tournament. Why don't we give them a tool that they can do it themselves, and let's see, how this really picks up, right? So that's actually maybe an interesting business model that a lot of people are trying to see and saying that, hey, actually, it's not that expensive to do esports. If I just do it fully online, that's a barrier to entry that we just crossed off the bucket.
I mean, that's cool, right? I mean, because I think it's not anyone's fault, I guess, because a lot of us we have horse blinders on to like the biggest the biggest tournaments out there, right?
Yeah.
Just like the international or the evos of the world, right? But I think you're right, where there's so many layers in between, or even at the bottom, right? Where I think people compete not to, like you said, right? It's for the sense of community, So it's not so much about. I think people know that it's they will never reach that 1%, because let's not kid ourselves, right? I think a lot of people would like to, especially people who don't know video games, they would like to think that it's a very simple thing, but the amount of eye to hand reaction is no mere human can actually do it, right? So, but I think a lot of people don't they don't have illusions of like ever reaching that level, but they are still passionate about it. So I think you're right. I mean, there's a lot of maybe there's a lot of brands missing out on what could be financially viable from going through the grassroots into the middle, right?
Yeah, I guess they're not really tapping into grassroots, right? Like, I think a lot of brands just look at things and they go, oh, what's the big shiny thing out there? I got tons of money. I want to be the title and all that kind of stuff. And I think through some experience of other people that I know, it didn't matter if you're rich. You can have all the money in the world. You could be whoever you want to be, son, or whatever. Or you could be the guy themselves, you know what I mean? And you can go to Riot Games, and you can go to Capcom, and you can go to Valve, and they don't really care. You don't have a proven track record. Like, just because you have money doesn't mean you can guarantee the kind of success they're looking at, because the metric for success in esports probably isn't just having teams show up and great games being played, right? It's got to be, I think it's the experience, right? The full A to B experience and all that kind of stuff. And, online experience as well, right? You got to set it up from the get-go. Do you always, is that something you've encountered, especially with like, maybe like a developer like Moonton, who's actually like, they're not just set up to just take part, right? In that Conor McGregor way, they're here to take over. They're here to plant their flag and just not have a game that passes in the night, but something that has some longevity to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it to Moonton. Like they've with MLBB, right? They've actually created a pretty sick game that.
Oh yeah. I still play.
In my spare time. The other thing that we fail to realize is, right, they've also got always these in-game events and so on, and that's how they make money. I mean, just selling skins is such a huge business here, right? That's them, right? I mean, if you think the M5 is huge, I know I know for a fact like a sponsorship package just with Moonton goes up to $500,000 USD, right? Um, but I'm pretty sure that they make much more money off licensing off their licensing from like Transformers to create a Transformers skin,
Yeah.
just selling it to players, and people love that. I mean, not just because the game is great, but because I get to look cool in the game as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. But I think when we look at how brands are trying to put themselves in front of the audience and all that, like you said, what's the next big shiny thing? I think a lot of brands maybe don't realize like it's not just about putting in my logo and sponsoring a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you guys watch the international, right? I've watched it. I can't recall a single brand.
Oh, none.
And I'm conscious about looking for that. And I just realized like, actually that's really true. And and it's considered sort of like I read this paper as well, a research paper about esports to say that 90% of your audience don't even recall a brand if it's a sponsor because they don't know it, right? If you put like a non-endemic brand, if you put like a more gaming related brand, they'll probably think about it because like, oh yeah, I've used Razer keyboard. I love that, right? But if you put something like, I don't know, done on cookies or like, I don't know, like, maybe Coca-Cola because the brand equity is so huge. But if you put any other brand out there like Tide or something, they won't really remember that, right? It's because it's not just about putting a logo and trying to support your brand and get in front of the audience. It's about how do I resonate with these people? How do I show them that I'm in it for the game? I love it. I'm one with you because the gaming community is just so strong that it's just not that easy to get their attention and their audience. So that's where a lot of brands are really struggling to say like, I want to tap into this community, but I can't. Tell me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, a lot of them like, let's go sponsor the biggest tournament out there and like show me this.
Yeah, that's generally the kind of feedback I keep getting. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, Josh. What are your experiences with that?
I mean, I think, it's more like I totally get it. Like, and maybe I'm just positing this question right to Calvin. So, is it more? Do we then tell brands who are sort of non-endemic to gaming and gamers, saying that, let's say for instance, like a Febreze wants to come in, right? So to doing clothes detergent and all, do we tell them no, or do we tell them that it's gonna be, we have to find a reason for people to wash clothes? I mean, we can if you think about it.
It's like you're gonna attend a tournament, better carry a bottle of Febreze so you can spray all the sweaties.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's, because I mean, just from my point of view, I feel that it's there's always a way. I feel, of course, it's much more difficult. I mean, compared to like a Logitech or like a Razer or like a Hitbox, right? I mean, those ones are easier when it comes to brands because gamers can relate and feel and they can get out there and buy it, right? Or even like TT racing as a chair, it's not.
It's
not so
functional
hard,
attribute,
but,
lah.
but I would like to believe that we don't say no to guys like Febreze or maybe like Danone, and we don't say that it's impossible. But what's your take on if there's any interest from brands who are non-endemic?
My take is that we just need to try a bit harder, right? To build that story, to talk about what do you really want to achieve with gamers, right? It's not just about, oh, it's a nice fancy new thing that I want to go into. You got to really think about why do I want to attract that audience, and second, like what are you willing to do to really do so, right?
Yeah, I think that's a strong point, right? Because I mean, it's not like a decal sticker where you just stick it on the banister and say that, hey, we are sponsoring this event, right? It's gotta, I guess like what you're saying is it's gotta make sense what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve it and what it is they want to get out of it, right?
Right. It's actually very true. I mean, like even a lot of energy drinks want to get into esports. Like Monster Energy just signed a huge deal with Call of Duty, right? I mean, it's about I don't really know what exactly they're doing in that space, but I know that they have to do something with Call of Duty all the time and put the Monster Energy brand. It's just really associating themselves with the game and the drink, right? But I'm pretty sure like brands like Monster Energy is going to come up with a bunch of tournaments and how they're supportive of the community
Mm-hmm.
and do a lot of activations around it. And even if it's just Call of Duty, because they just want to associate themselves with gamers' mind, right? Every time you look at a game or you play something, I'm thirsty, I want to drink Monster Energy, maybe, right? But it's not going to be easy, right? There's a lot of work that's going into it. It's not just about running a tournament and hoping that people would look at your brand, and even if
Mm-hmm.
you offer like a carton of Monster Energy as the prizes, I don't know, it could be boasting power, but I think a lot of work that needs to go into how are you actually giving back to the community, right? How are you
Yeah.
actually supporting them? How are you helping the gaming community in that sense, right? I think especially in this age of cancel, right? It's so easy to get things wrong, but very
Yeah,
difficult
yeah.
to get things right.
That is so true. I think in my mind as a having been in advertising for 18 years, you said Monster Energy and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like you get a triple kill instead of saying triple in the game, you say monster, right? Like in
Yeah.
Dota, you get monster kills and all that, right?
Monster kills, right? Yeah.
And then I'm like, but that's a very copywriter, creative, advertising dude point of view. I think what you addressed just now, which is really kind of hitting the nail on the head, which is, so what if your brand is a title sponsor? So what if Red Bull is Red Bull Kumite for all the Street Fighter events? Like, what is their give back to the community? And I think that is the egg that's hard to crack, right? It's probably the hardest to crack. I saw like Red Bull didn't really have the answer, but when they ran the tournament, it is the smoothest I've ever seen. They had like very, very little downtime. They had players give their sticks to the wait staff there. They'll go there, they'll plug the USBs in, do a button check for everything, and like basically it was like nonstop. There's no break between it. It was kind of like going to Good Vibes Festival recently, right? And they have two stages. One is, and there's no break between it, right? So one is going to be playing like some rapper, and then the rapper is done, and then straight away into some pop singer who's cute or whatever and bubbly, and the wait time was less than half an hour, less than 20 minutes. So it was a very quick turnaround of pace, and I was like, is Red Bull's giving back to community efficiency? It can't be that, right? I mean, like, for sure it keeps the action going and you don't have lulls in the action. You're going from match to match to match to match as quickly as you can. But that can't be it, right? I mean, other than, buying gear that's labeled Red Bull, aside from signing Daigo Mahara and all that, like, what else? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think people have solved it that far yet. Aside from being that pop culture icon, right?
I mean, if I may go first, Calvin,
Yeah, go.
I think the great thing about Red Bull, well, we're talking about Red Bull International, right?
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, it's within their DNA to be so entrenched within a sport, right? And esport is no different. So I think maybe the way that, like, what you've just described, right? It's basically them giving back to the community because they get themselves entrenched in the community, right? And you see them doing this in like Formula One as well, where they put in the money and they put in to build that expertise, and it's the same thing that they're doing with like the Red Bull Committee as well, right? It's really, that's how they're giving back, I think, and maybe that's part of what they believe in. And if you see, like, even in football, right, there are no jokes about what they put in terms of money when it comes to the different clubs across from Germany to Austria to even like the New York Red Bulls, right? It's like, it's I think they put in the investment, but also they put in the effort to really be experts within what they want to approach, right? And that makes the big difference, don't you think?
Is that kind of like having a Arsenal junior program? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, it's
I
not
think
just
it's, yeah.
it's not just having my name big and shiny as the main sponsor. It's the everything I do top to bottom that carries the ethos of the brand, right? Like, if I was gonna say like Tide is gonna sponsor a team, You know what I mean? Like this team doesn't swear; they always wear white. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
All
So
their
maybe it's just
devices are
about like
white.
finishing.
You know what I mean?
Maybe it's just about finishing sets clean, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. You know, like you
okay,
got to
we
clean sheet
we
somebody
can
all
fit
the
in
time.
something. Can just use our advertising money.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there is a space. I mean, okay. I think I could buy that as a reason to exist, right? As a reason to do something in that space, right? Kevin, your thoughts?
I think it's really about addressing what do gamers want in general. Then you can think about what do you want to give back. And I mean, if you just take the gamers on average, right? We do know that there is a few segments of them. I could probably name the top four at the top of my head. One is I've already told you about the ultimate gamer, the people that just want to play and they really want to be the best. Those are your aspiring, probably esports athletes, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if I run a tournament and I say that you could have a chance to be pro, those are the guys who jump first at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm.
that's probably 5%. You've got maybe like the 30% who are what you call your popcorn gamers. So they love to watch content, right? I want to watch any content out there. I play for fun, but I really love to watch the pros. And hey, if my friends on that top 5% that's going pro, I'll watch it even more.
Mm-hmm.
There's also your value seekers, your 20% of guys like, I love to play casual games and all that, and I want to buy the best cheap items, or whenever there's a promo running, I'll be the first one to buy that Clash of Clan pack or diamonds or
Mm.
whatever not. And
Mhm.
I don't know, I can't really recall what's the fourth one at the top of my mind, but oh yeah, wait, it's people like me and you, like casual gamers, right? We just play for fun, right?
Yeah,
If
Old
I
farts still pretending they're good at
if I'm
games.
playing for fun, and it's really taking up some of my time. But if people tell me that, hey, actually, there's a tournament that you can join, and like it's so simple for me, and I can just play every week, why not? I'm really gonna set that time aside to play. I might as well play a bit more with
Mm-hmm.
other people and maybe get my skill out there. And the thing that I love about esports, right, and this is drawing my experience from gamification, people love to compare their standings with each other,
Oh yeah.
right? Like, for example, if one point was like, hey, if you're already playing casual games, and I can tell you that your rank on a Flappy Bird means X amount of money that you can win if you beat this guy, dude, you
Mhm.
see engagement shoot through the roof, right? We saw at one point like a game was being played for more than an hour just because they could win a prize and because their name's going to be on the famous leaderboard and so on and so forth. So I think that actually really resonates with gamers because it's not just about gamers have always this thing about ego, like I'm better than you,
Mm-hmm.
right? You do have those guys who shy away from competition, probably a small subset. People like me, actually, I don't really like to put myself out there for competition's
Neither
sake.
do I.
I'm a PVE guy like you, right? That's why I play Time Crisis versus like Street Fighter to
Oh,
whoop my
yeah.
ass. Yeah, but yeah, I think if you think about for a few aspects that what a gamer loves, I mean, they love the aspiration that they could probably go pro. They love to watch content. They love to compete and play with their friends. If we could find some way to sort of stimulate and facilitate that even more, I mean, and just say if a brand's able to do that for them, they're more likely to remember that brand even though it's non-endemic because hey, this brand is fulfilling a need that I want.
That's true. And I think a lot of people don't. You know, in that video that Josh and I watched today, it was talking about how the FGC is very much a grassroots type of thing. Like, it still doesn't have seeding for major tournaments like Evo and all that kind of stuff. Whereas only CPT has like, okay, the 32 best players. They've earned enough points to have
Mm.
a seat at the table and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's kind of interesting that actually I would crave to compete against somebody of my level for a bit of bragging rights and some money, and especially if the guy is my age too, right? Like, you know, this guy's still
And you don't get
grinding.
whooped by the 16-year-old kid
No,
who plays
no,
better
not
than you.
anymore. Not. I mean, because well, to be fair, if some of the kids knew, like when I'm playing Apex, how old I was and that I just beat them, they'd be pretty upset. It's like, what is this
No, but
old
sometimes it's
guy
as simple
doing?
as that, right? We just need to be the champion of our little corner in the village. Like it doesn't
Yeah,
have to be even the village now.
yeah, it's true. I think, but there's something that that's true. You know, like nobody taps into that small subset of people who want to compete, they're not good enough. It's like going to a golf course and you get paired up with somebody and you have your buddy with you and he's got his buddy with him and you guys are going, well, neither of us are scratch golfers, but how's $50 a hole sound? You know what I mean? Like, C gets through 18 with less strokes and all that, for example. I mean, that's just kind of making it more fun to play, right? Making it more engaging to play. I think that's a great idea. I think that's something that I think more and more brands should consider doing. Like, you don't have small time and still have a lot of fun too. You know what I mean? Like, it enriched the lives of so many just by doing that. And then I think the knock-on effect would be great too, right? Like, everybody hears about this like brand going in and like sponsoring a couple of, or like giving prize money to a few old fuddy-duddies and they're like, oh, you should do that for my school league, you should do that for my uni league or whatever. And I guess that's community, is it not? You're organically growing that way too. So I did want to bring up something which, because we kind of danced around it a little tiny bit, but the idea, because I remember we made a comment about F1, right? And how a lot of people think that video games is just you clicking a bunch of buttons and having some reaction time. And a lot of people levy the same type of comment against Formula One drivers, right? They'd be like, the car does everything. All they have to do is press a couple buttons and push a couple pedals and turn. And I was like, that's totally not the case. You know what I mean? Like, we read a fact the other day that, like, if you didn't train your body, persistent exposure to, like, 3, 4, 5G in the corners and in turns is going to Swiss cheese your body. Like, you're going to feel it after maybe a full 2 or 3 laps at speed, right? Like, your neck would be a limp noodle. Your heart would probably be beating in the wrong place. And why that's important is because, and it totally just bringing this up out of randomness, is because Gran Turismo, the movie, is out. So,
oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Jan Mardenborough is this guy's story. He was a guy who's playing on Gran Turismo, trying to get into the Nissan GT Academy, and I think it was PS3 and it was GT5 or something. And he came out of that entire academy and he won the tournament, right? And he became a real professional racing driver. And I was like, that is the most epic translation of esports into reality, isn't it? Right? Like, he is so, it's like what you took electronically meant something in real life. You know what I mean? Like, that's probably one of the better success stories that probably people don't know about, right? Because obviously Jan doesn't drive in IndyCar, he doesn't drive in Formula One, and those are the two pinnacles of open wheel racing and all that kind of stuff, right? But to do that, that's some drama there, you know what I mean? Like, and I feel, to your point, Josh, today at the office we were talking about it, like, that's what we need, don't we? You know what I mean? Like, sometimes esports needs the drama. Sometimes esports needs, like, a K-Brad and I can't remember the other guy, and they're basically mocking each other. They're looking each other dead in the face. They're like 2 inches from each other's foreheads. They look like they're gonna, headbutt each other, and like that makes for great television, right? Great Twitch streaming. I think that is something there, right? Like, it's sort of like the Jan Mardenborough GT is sort of showing us the way of how electronic became real, and there was a lot of drama involved.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe people don't do enough to tell that story. Do you think it's on the onus? Is the onus is on the gamer, the publisher? Sorry, the publisher, or, is it on the people out there who want to tell these stories? Like, brands could get in and do that.
I mean, I think it's kind of like two things, right? I think you're right in that, and especially what we were talking about earlier. People love the rags to riches or the underdog. I mean, these are all tried and true, tested stories that we resonate and people love, right? I mean, we all love these kind of stories. But I think it's so. I mean, no matter what it is, I think the storytelling, the narrative, is gonna be important, basically, for any brand or anyone who wants to make it big somewhere, because somebody has to remember something memorable that you've done. But I think the other interesting thing that you brought up when it comes to like translating your skill in the digital space to then becoming a full-fledged racer with that new movie coming out on Gran Turismo, right? It's kind of almost the same where you know what they always say that the sportsmen and sportswomen,
Mm-hmm.
you're not just good in one sport, you're good in like
Oh.
multiple sports.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's so true, right? Because you can see like Rafa Nadal, he's really good at futsal as well. And I think the same goes for esports pros, right? I think people maybe they don't acknowledge it enough. Maybe the movie is a great example where if you have that acumen as a competitor and as a professional, right, you know what it takes for something, even though it's esports and it's just gaming, to what the wider world actually just thinks is just games, right? But it's actually translatable, at least the
In some cases,
basic,
yeah.
the basic facets. I mean, I'm sure that it's G-force is no mere thing, right?
Oh
But
no, yeah.
body conditioning is important, but mental fortitude, reaction times, those things are translatable, and it can be. I mean, it's something that you hone, but it is something that I feel that it's among the best of us. None of us within this chat space now, but yeah, among the pros, I think it's something that they can and do translate. Yeah.
Totally agree with you, Josh. I mean, a lot of people think like with video games, right? And you're so good at it, it's because you just play games and like you're just naturally good. People take for granted that maybe that's actually a lot of training that goes behind it. I mean, last time I used to be a huge fan of StarCraft 2, right? I wasn't that good, but like I was fairly competitive when it came to that. It was probably like the only game that was competitive on, right? Um, but like it wasn't easy to sort of grind and get to what my diamond or platinum level. And when I looked at how the pros did it, and especially in Korea, South Korea, like they have a training center to train their teams, and these guys are playing 8 hours a day. When they're not playing, they're looking at builds, they're looking at every stat, they're looking at strategy, because StarCraft is a strategy game. I mean, like there's so many ways to destroy your enemy, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of esports is all about that as well. You don't think like, oh, I just press a few buttons and like, oh, my character is so OP, I'll kill everybody. There's a lot of strategy that goes behind it when you start the game. How do you play? How do you grind? Who do you save or who do you kill? Right? You know, support characters, abilities, especially in all those mobile things. I think people don't really get that, but people see it in sports like, oh yeah, these guys train all the time. He's physically enduring. People don't really get that when it comes to esports. Like you're just playing games for 8 hours. Not really. I think if you're really training for it, there's a purpose to it, right? I mean, that's mental strain for you right there. That's really improving your cognitive ability and your acumen. I'm very surprised, like, there's no story about those sort of like, you always on Netflix documentaries about Ronaldo, Nadal, or whoever not, right? Nobody's like featured, I don't know, like like mid one or something, even from Malaysia, right?
Yeah.
So like, how did this guy get so good? How did this esports guy get so good? Nobody really appreciates that these days.
Yeah, it's true. I think the story of Magic Johnson was that he would have to be pulled off the court in the backyard at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. He's just sitting there shooting layups and shooting jumpers and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's the same thing, right? Like it's that dedication, or you find something so magical about this thing that you're doing that you want to make it your thing, right? And that in and of itself brings up a whole different slew of capability or understanding, right? Like somebody once said that if you get into a boxing ring with somebody and you fought them with the rules of obviously or even like kickboxing rules and all that, you would leave the ring understanding more about them than anyone could have in a conversation. And I feel like some truth of that is applied to when I played sim racing with my friends over COVID, right? When I sim race with them, I kind of learned their tendencies too. I know that if I'm chasing them behind, they're more or less likely to cover the inside lane or go to the outside or maybe spin out like I do when I'm getting pressure. So I mean, there are truths about someone's character. I guess you could learn from that as well, right? Like that idea that competition sort of brings out the person's character too.
Yeah. I think that's really true, right? Because when it comes to competition, how much of our real selves can we really hide, right?
Yeah, that's true, right?
Yeah.
You'd have tendencies too, right? Like,
Mm.
I think Kobe, God bless him, had one of those things where he would just sit there and he could just tell you 10 things about the person he's going to be facing today. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this guy, when he looks down, he's getting ready to dribble. If his foot is planted, he's the pump fake is not a real pump fake. He's not gonna shoot it. So you mean like there was all these like treasure trove of things that I'm like, why doesn't ESPN have an analyst that actually knows what the hell they're talking about? Now they're just talking heads, right? They just like to yell and shout at each other like, because that's entertainment. I want to learn something about basketball too. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they're there for, right? So yeah, but I feel like we digressed a lot, right? We went from here to there, and suddenly like, where's the meeting in the middle? But just coming back to this whole drama thing and all that, right? I know people crave the drama nowadays, but like seeing it unfold, seeing a great comeback story and all that, kind of is really fun to see. In any esport or any sport for that matter. Like I've watched curling videos at the Olympics or highlights of Team Canada losing. It kind of sucks, but I'll watch it. You know what I mean? Like, because it's kind of cool, right? You want to see how these people struggle. You might know the outcome, but you still want to see how they got there, how they did it, right?
Yeah, so true. I mean, it's I think at the end, I mean, I totally get like throughout the course of our conversation when it comes to what brands want in terms of clicks or views or translation into buying more energy drinks from consumers, right? But I think it's just like what Calvin said, it's you got to know, or you got at least be clear what you want to achieve through consumers and audiences. Build a narrative in, it's very important, right? But I think it's not just being there for the sake of being there, but there needs to be purpose to why a brand wants to participate with an audience, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's at times we just get so lost in terms of and like you said, John, earlier, right? It's the shiny thing, it's my brand gets mentioned here and there, but if that's the end game, then maybe you shouldn't be in the game, in the first place.
It's kind of that mirror, isn't it, right? Like, you can't build long-lasting love for a brand by just association, right? You gotta, it's like Chilip likes to say brand intimacy, right?
Yeah.
Before you get brand love, you gotta have some intimacy, like some sort of, brush the fingers a little bit before you hold the hand kind of thing. Yeah. I think there's definitely more to the space, right? I mean, I know we talked about drama and telling that story. I know that's not, brand friendly. You don't want to have a couple of a few dudes kind of trying to punch each other after the end of a Dota 2 tournament or something, or you know what I mean? Like, that is not becoming of an athlete even in the cyber world, right? Like, but there are spaces to sort of, settle the score, so to speak, and all that. Like, a long time ago when I started playing Street Fighter 4 again, I thought it'd be a great idea. I put it out there on my Facebook. I'm like, 14 people saw it. And it's like, none of them wanted to play me in Street Fighter. And I was like, yeah, I don't mind, throwing down the gauntlet and seeing like which agency has the best Street Fighter player. And it's like, well, obviously my reach wasn't far enough. I didn't have Calvin. I should have had Calvin to do the outreach for me.
I'll probably lose.
No, it's nothing about that. I think it's just sort of bringing people together.
It's not PvE.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I was gonna. I guess futilely and sort of naively ask this question that like, is there a singular meaning to esports? And I guess 50 minutes later, I don't think there is one, because it's a different takeout for everyone. Do you think that's fair to say?
I was just Googling the definition of esports since we're on the computer, right? Oxford. Let me just read to you what Oxford says, right? Shoot, now I got to find it again. a multiplayer video game played competitively for spectators, typically by professional gamers.
Wow, that is as I guess that
Basic.
yeah, that is as basic as it gets, right? You know what I mean? Like I'm sure if you Google sports in Oxford Dictionary, it'd be a bunch of
Almost the
people
same.
playing some sport for
For
the same reason.
spectators.
Yeah, for the spectators. I mean, like,
Yeah.
that's
I
crazy.
think I think based on what we just discussed, I mean, esports has evolved so much beyond that. I mean, there's just
Mm.
so many ways that you can categorize or put different spectrums into esports. I would say that I'll even dare say, right, esports doesn't have to just be pro. There's a spectrum to it, like from your casual all the way up to your really super competitive, all the different levels in between. I think anything that has to do with playing a video game for something and to really show off your skill, to me, that's esports,
Yeah.
right?
hmm
Yeah.
I think
I
that's
mean,
cool.
really, that is. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to
I mean, if I
finish.
just play for, yeah,
Oh,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I do want to.
I was just saying, if I always want to say, like, yeah, I could call myself a football pro when I used to play for high school.
Hmm.
Sadly to say, it's not really the case, but I think esports is actually a broader definition than professional sports, right? You don't call it professional
Mm.
sports, you call it sports,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I did want to finish off with this last question because I think I think it's apt because obviously this is going to be on LinkedIn, right? It's the only place I share this thing, other than within my own WhatsApp groups and all that. So it's esports. I think often um, people try to get in and they're not very cognizant of where they are in the pecking order. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like McDonald's goes in, at McDonald's, who are you? And then, game publishers are like, yeah, who the hell are you? You know what I mean? Like, we don't really need your money. We have a million McDonald's waiting to give us money. But I think rightfully we put it right is community building, right? And I think that speaks to a totally different thing. And I just want to get your takes on this because I think a certain level of humility is required, not just in terms of being as a participant, but as a brand trying to come in. You're A lot of brands go in there and go, I have media money, so that should get my name out there. But it's not as easy as that, right? Because it's like undertaking a totally different realm of possibility. It's like going to sports, right? Like that's why sports marketing is so bad sometimes, right? Like I just see a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of banners like Pizza Hut on the football pitch or whatever, and then I'm thinking like Wanda Coffee, and then I'm like, well, and what?
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
what,
mean?
right?
Yeah. What do you guys think? I mean, like I know I said a lot, but like, you think like would brands benefit from any sort of humility coming into the space?
Well, I think if you have humility, but you also have millions of dollars to spend on media, that's actually a lot that you can do with esports.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm.
mean, obviously, don't go and spend it on just like TVC buys and
Mm.
burn your money there. I mean, if brands really want to get into the space and they've really got the budget, there's a lot of things that it can do for community, right? Not just in like giving a prize pool. I mean, if you just look at esports, I've not seen a single brand that has probably helped to find the next grassroots esports team or build these
Mm.
guys up from pro. I'll be really interested to see if there's a brand that would, you know, help do a Rex to Riches story, because there's a lot of people out there, but it's just so hard to identify them, right? I mean, these guys are out there because they're playing on their own, they're playing in their own small community. We just don't
Mm.
need to shine the spotlight onto these guys, right? And I like what George said about the narrative, right? And I really agree that it's really about what's the story here. I mean, every time when you talk about brand, it's not about brand awareness. It's like, what do people feel when they look at your brand? I mean, is it this guys that's really helped me, or it's just another brand out there? I like
Yeah.
your drink, I like your food, right? But what else are you doing for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's so true, right? Because I mean, and especially in this day and age where, I mean, most consumers, even whatever we want to count them as rural or suburban people, right? But it's no different because people know what brands are and accountability is important, right?
Mm.
So I mean, we can't hide behind what we used to be able to, or maybe what they used to be able to, like during the 70s and the 80s, right? It's now your brand is as much out there as any human being, right? Is out there. So, I mean, I think you're so right in that um, it is about having humility, but also about what you can give back to communities. But more importantly, I think maybe some of us do this by mistake or it's just natural where we get so distracted with what we want to achieve as an end goal, right? We kind of forget that there are human beings behind. I mean, you don't care if it's honestly, it doesn't matter if it's B2B or B2C, right? At the end of the day, it's people driving businesses, right? So if you want that audience, you got to know what you want to give back to them, either. And like for instance, like Coca-Cola doesn't need to worry about this because they've already cornered on happiness in the Sunday afternoon kind of space, right? But that's them, you know. So nobody has that brand equity like a Coca-Cola, right? So for everyone else, they really need to know what they want to give back to these select people, and maybe it's just it could be sometimes beyond games, right? So video games from the Dota 2s to the LOLs to Street Fighter, even. I mean, it's a medium of entertainment, but we're so much more than that, right? So sometimes we have dreams of our own and ambitions of our own. So maybe it's about giving back to that facet and not necessarily building the next pro gamer, right? Does it have to be? I don't know. Could be a question, right? But
I guess it's all parts, right? Like do you remember the story from Evo this year? Bonchan had a flight canceled, and Red Bull like last minute pulled some cash out of the petty cash box and bought him like a first class ticket on the next available
cool.
flight or something like that. I was like, really? I mean, like, they probably don't even pay him that much money in a year to be a sponsored athlete by Red Bull or, you know, sponsored Street Fighter player by Red Bull. And I'm like, wow, they really went above and beyond for a guy who finished top 32. I'm so mean.
No, but that's the point, right? It's the story, right? I mean, yes, it's a recognized personality. Yes, it's for someone to compete in, someone that already has a certain amount of equity, right? But it is that story behind what the brand can do for this person, right? So, but be it a recognizable, I mean, of course, it's easier with someone you recognize like Bonchan, right? But can it be for someone else within the middle? I mean, whatever it is, even if you're recognized or not, you still take away a memory of what the brand has done for you, right?
Yeah. Cool. Okay. I mean, we've done a pretty good hour session, I think, and there's plenty of stuff in here to unpack. I think some of it warrants another go around, I think. You know what I mean? Like some of this stuff with, even in my own personal life, right? Like, because of the car I bought, I'm now in a different car group, right? And this car group happens to have a kid who's taking part in Toyota GR Vios series of races in Sepang. So he gets paired with a celebrity racer, or, you know, some people get paired with Tunku Jan, which is like, you know, the god of drifting in Malaysia. And he has translated his digital racing life to a real one. And now he has, like, legit, he actually has track records for a particular car, which is, I'll just tell it now, it's an F80 M3 or M4 car. He has a track record for it. He's now the fastest M4 record holder in terms of timing. And I think that's really cool. Like, these things do translate. I mean, okay, fine. I know the example was car racing, right? But there was always something else that you could apply this knowledge to. You know what I mean? Like, and I think, I guess to me, that I would like to think that that's what esports is. This avenue, this open door, this thing that you can't quite put your finger on it, but you come out better for it at the end. What do you guys think before we close out? Is it too airy-fairy? Am I still dreaming? Projecting my own wants onto people.
I don't really know, actually. I mean, it's, I used to think like, again, I use the example of my younger brother, right? Like at one point, he actually told me he graduated, right, from university as a bachelor's honors degree, and he told me that I want to be a gamer. I was like, what? You serious? I mean, I went and asked like in the most condescending way, are you any good? And then when he played me, right, like, damn, he's actually really good in Dota, right? And I told him like, look, if that's really what you want, and you really think that you can make it, you got to treat the game as a job.
Oh yeah.
Because at the end of the day, right, that's what's gonna get you money. Being so typical Asian, right? How you gonna make money, right? um, but also at the other point, I always have that nagging feeling like, is that really the best career for you? I mean, some people really do make it, right? I mean, follow and chase your dream. But I think the aspect with esports is that because it's so accessible, because you can easily get into a community and compete and really showcase your skills versus a football, you always play with the same group of friends, right? And it's very difficult to sort of up your level and compete and
Yeah.
find a team and all that. It's not really the case with esports because, the internet, right? I think it leaves a lot to be aspired for anyone who wants to be in esports. And with that being said, it leaves a lot of opportunities to build stories around that. Yeah, I mean, that's just really things that's just on my mind. But I don't know. I think we may not be as airy fairy as you think. There actually could be something that actually supports it in some way. I mean, I'm in the business of esports. I gotta believe there is.
Yeah, over 100%, right?
I can't say, oh, esports is dead, right? I'll lose my job. But
No.
I definitely think there's a huge opportunity right there, right now.
Josh, want to close this out?
Yeah, I think so. Right. I mean, in terms of accessibility, we are the generation that has all the accessibility to see, to look
That is
at,
true.
find out and learn, experience narratives, dive into the stories of others, right? So, but yeah, I think it's also learning is there for us, right? And especially, I guess, maybe just to wrap it up a little bit, it's there for brands too. So I think it's about brands just, you don't need to know in and out what it is. A lot of us are guilty of it, where you just need to spend a little bit of time to just get to know the people behind the personalities, the games itself. You just need to be exposed to it a little bit, and you got to get your head out of the numbers and targets thing a little bit. Just spend some time to get to know people behind things, and maybe we can get somewhere then after that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's cool. I guess that's good. I think we can end on that note. So we're out.